Let's concentrate then, moving on to the Eyecatchers, and Hugh's got a whole list of them here. Two of them we're going to see come up in the same race. That's Dream Tune and Elusive Flame, a whole host of different tracks. We'll start then, let's get underway with Demora, trained by Robert Cowell, who's having a pretty good time of things at the moment, and this, as you can see, comes up at Southwell.
Yeah, and I've put Demora down as the Eyecatcher, but I really just take a strong view of this race. The first three home in particular, two of them who are trained by Mick Appleby, and the very impressive winner Silken Express, who I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about as well. Demora was making her reappearance. She just got slightly hampered there, didn't make any difference to the result, but she's got form on different types of ground on turf as well, and I'm sure she's going to have a very good season. All three of these would be of interest if they did return to Southwell. It was a good time. It's quite difficult to equate the time sometimes at Southwell over 5 furlongs because it is a different track to the round track, but I think the front three pulling well clear in a good time. I think they're all horses to be interested in one way or another, and I just picked Demora out because she's only gone up £2 for that, and I'm sure she'll be very competitive wherever she goes next. And
it could be wherever she goes, isn't it? Because you said she's pretty flexible ground-wise, and you know, you might see her
and she's lightly raced, and she might be a bit of a standard bearer for the stable. It's obviously a very progressive, upwardly mobile stable anyway. Matahari Blue is a very useful filly on that surface and on soft ground on turf as well. And the front two that beat her, I think, are well above average for the kind of horse you see running at Southwell.
So a good little race. Let's take a look then at a 3-year-old now in training with Hughie Morrison, and this horse is called Realise, and pictured here at Lingfield. Yeah,
Realise had really caught the eye on his debut, and this is a sort of a token selection from a number of possibilities at this Lingfield meeting, particularly on the first day, in that it was another meeting where I felt it was an advantage to race fairly tight against the rail, and the first and second, as it stands at the moment, Jammy Guest and Karamak are going to stay there, and I think that the way that Realise stays on 3 wide from the rail, I thought this was an encouraging run, even though in the end he does get beaten a few lengths in the end, but I think he's perhaps away from the best ground, and he's not given a hard time once he's beaten. The one thing he would say is he needs another run for a mark now, but somewhere down the line this horse is going to win races, I'm sure. He's shown ability now on both starts, and he was better than the result there because I don't think he was on the best ground.
Yeah, and he travelled fairly well, didn't he, through the race? Yeah. It just seems as if once his chance was gone, then...
And the runner-up Karamak had run really well at that track as a 2-year-old as well. He was one of my Eyecatchers last year at Lingfield, so I wasn't surprised to see him run well. He got a good ride in that his jockey got him across to 1 off the rail from a low draw. The winner had the rail all along, and I think they had the advantage over the third placed horse.
Okay, that's Realise. Let's move on and take a look at Snooki, and this one comes up at Ripon, and this is Richard Fahey's horse. This horse ends up 5th on this occasion.
Yeah, and he'd been in really good form, and he's just shaped here as if he needs to go back to a mile. He tries to take on Awake My Soul, who's yet another of the much improved horses for David O'Meara, and he gets in a battle with him, and he loses that battle, and he fades into 5th in the closing stages. And to me, he just didn't stay. He didn't stay the trip, and he'll be of more interest back to 1 mile. He'd been creating a really good impression prior to that race, and I suspect he might be winning again once he drops in trip.
Okay, so Snooki, one to keep an eye on once he drops back in distance. Now let's take a look at Swift Bounty, and this was obviously, I think, over further, wasn't it?
I think this was 7, and this was a huge Eyecatcher because the winner makes all. Don't think he went that strong a gallop, and Swift Bounty, you can see he's set an awful lot to do, and he's travelling really strongly at the rear of the field, and he looks like he's about to make progress. And the horse he gets trapped behind there is the eventual runner-up, George Sank, and he has to be switched. He's switched it inside, still nowhere for him to go. And the race is all over by the time he finally does get in the clear. He does just carry his head slightly awkwardly in the closing stages, but I'd give him the benefit of the doubt for now. He's miles better than the result. He would have... it's difficult to say where he would have finished in relationship to the winner, but he's much better than that bare result there. I thought that was a really promising run.
And that was over a mile. Do you think they'll stick at that? And okay. Yeah, I was thinking before that he's been mostly 7.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say he didn't get it. I don't think it was the most strongly run race, but he shaped like he just returned in really good form. and he'd be particularly interested if he returns to Ascot, because when you see a horse travel really well there once, they tend to do it over and over again.
Yeah, he picked up, didn't he? Okay, that was Swift Bounty, and that was on his first start this season. Next up, we're going to take a look at the old fella, I think I can call him that now, Tinchu, who we know an awful lot about. This was in the 1.5 mile race at Ascot the weekend.
Yeah, this is difficult for me to watch because there's a horse who I put up twice as an eye catcher, Angel Gabriel, comes and wins the race. And the problem was I'd been waiting for Tinchu to run again at Ascot for months and months, and I ummed and ahed, and obviously I went for the wrong one in the end. Tinchu eventually finishes well beaten, but she travelled well, and you see just when we picked up the tape she was being hampered, and I don't think she got home over a 1.4 mile, which was always likely to be the case.
Yeah.
The handicap has dropped her £5 on turf for that. And I think she's just she might run well on turf again off that mark, because although she's better on polychack, I'm starting to think that the relative difference in the weights is overstating that possibly now. She's definitely better on polychack, but she's run really well most of her starts at Ascot. As I say, I don't think she got home there, but she's just the type to pop at a big price back over 1 mile 2 furlong, particularly if she returns there, if they can find her a little 1 mile 2 furlong race, because she's been dropped another £5, and she shaped like she wasn't in the worst form there as well.
And you found a bit of a link, haven't you, in the past between polytrack horses that run well there and Ascot, or is that not so much the case now?
I'm not disagreeing with it. I've never actually seen any evidence that backs it up. I've seen evidence that kind of disproves it. I think you've got to be a bit wary of the availability bias, because we notice it when polytrack horses run well there, and we don't notice it when they run poorly there. Having said that, Ascot the straight track is a fairly sand-based track, so there is some logic behind it, and that the same kind of horse who has a high cruising speed on polytrack often goes well there. So I'd just like to see more evidence. It's a very difficult thing to prove, because the only way it tends to be brought up whenever a horse runs well there. But you know, I accept that it's a sand-based track. I prefer just to look for horses that run well at Ascot before, because it is still, you know, it's not the same as polytrack. It does have turf in it as well. So even on the polytrack tracks, you can get horses that are more suited by one than the other. So I suspect there's something in it, but I wish we could actually see some empirical evidence rather than just speculation. But as I say, horses that run well at Ascot once tend to run well there again.
Okay, so Derek Hayden-Jones will keep an eye out for his mare if she returns to Ascot, but definitely over the 1.25 miles. It was a 1.5 miles last time. Now we're going to take a look at, this is the Victoria Cup, and in it we've got two horses that, well, chart a very different route. Dream Tune over the far side, and Elusive Flame, very handy. In fact, elects to make all, really. Elusive Flame in the centre.
Yeah, you could watch this race a few times and pick up different eye catchers every time. And it may be that in a few weeks I'm revising my opinion of this, because you have to say that in the later race, which we're actually going to see in a minute, the field split into two groups and the far side came out well on top. For the time being, Elusive Flame, the hold-up horses came to the fore in the group on the stand side, and they were behind the centre group for much of the race, which suggests the centre group might have gone off too quick, which is why I've marked Elusive Flame up. You can see her in the Jeff Smith colours fading into about 9th place. So that was her. Dream Tune started off on a solo route at the far rail. Might well have won if he'd stayed there actually, but his rider has come across, and he's then got into sort of a second race where he's then had to catch the centre group and then go past them. So I thought that was a really impressive run. It may be that although the far side proved favoured in the later race, the middle, that doesn't necessarily mean that the middle is quicker than the stand side, if you see what you mean. You get all sorts of strips of ground these days with modern drainage. So I'm not taking it as read yet that the centre group were on a better strip of ground than the stand side group in that race, just because it appeared in the later race that the far side group were on a better. Does that make sense? Yeah. It may be that the far side was quicker than the centre. We don't know yet, and you just have to keep an eye on the form. But I thought both those two shaped quite well. Dream Tune in particular, because he had to do an awful lot of running from where he was, and he ran all the way to the line. I
suppose we have to bear that race in mind, obviously looking ahead to Royal Ascot as well. And there's plenty of horses, I mean, even the winner there, Excellent Guest, who loves Ascot. I mean, that's a horse who's come back and back and back, and he's been very unlucky. Second in the Royal Hunt Cup in the past.
The trouble with these big Ascot handicaps now is that as I've said, Ascot horses tend to run well there over and over, but the fields tend to be full of them nowadays because the trainers, for a start, there's a lot of very valuable races run over 7 furlongs, a lot of very valuable 7 furlongs in a mile, but especially 7 furlong handicaps during the course of the year. And the trainers' programme, once they've got a horse of that ilk who's run well there before.
They've pretty much got one a month, haven't they?
Yeah, there's the International, and there's the is it the Buckingham Palace at Royal Ascot over 7, as well as the Hunt Cup. There's the Victoria Cup. So there's one at the
there's one in the July meeting.
The apprentice race at the
King George meeting
at the end of season,
and the Champions
Quidco
meeting.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of them, and it's the same horses who you look at it and you think, right, well, there's about 15 in this that I'm quite interested in on the basis of their course form. So Elusive Flame might be more interest back at somewhere like Newmarket, which is more of a front runner's track, or well, both Newmarket courses can be. She made all at the July meeting, I think it was last year. Ascot, not the easiest place on the straight course to make all the running, so you just don't know. If she were held up there, she might run well again, but I thought that was a good run in the circumstances, and she might need to drop a few pounds, but she's probably in better form than the finishing position suggests.
Okay, well, bear what Hugh was saying formatively in mind then about the far side and obviously the differences in the track, because on the same day at Ascot we saw Salumi perform in a different race, and the way the race developed over on the far side. Hugh? Yeah,
and I thought there's a lot to like about this. This is an interesting trainer change. His powerful owners switched this horse to John Butler from David Simcock, and he ends up being on the wrong side in terms of the result anyway. Time will show how much of a disadvantage he was at, but he's made all the running on that side, which isn't, as I've said, isn't the easiest thing to do at Ascot, I don't think. And he's comfortably on top in the closing stage and never really looks like being caught by the stand side group. Obviously, as a result, he won't go up for basically winning a, what was it, 11 or 12 runner race, because there's 4 or 5 in front of him on the other side. His form from last year looks very strong to me. That was a really encouraging comeback on a track that, as I say, I don't really think tends to favour horses on the speed. So yeah, lots to be positive about from that run.
Okay, that was Salumi, keep an eye on him. And finally, Orbison, who's a 3-year-old, only having his second start in this race. You can pick out the Spence colours there. It's Roger Varian horse. He still looked a bit green on this occasion.
Yeah, he'd run as if he perhaps needed the races on his racecourse debut, and then his jockey eventually reported, or his jockey after the race reported, that the saddle had slipped, and you'll see that Richard Hughes does ease him down in the closing stage. But I like the way he went past horses. He's never going to get competitive from his position on the track. They're going away from him at the front, and he's probably not quite up to winning a maiden of this calibre, but he went past a lot of horses, and then presumably the saddle's gone there just where you've seen him ease down, and he would have been a lot closer. But he that was a big mid-race move from a difficult position. I know that Doncaster can favour hold-up horses, but I thought that was encouraging, the way he went past a number of horses in a short space of time, albeit 7 or 8 lengths down on the leader. So again, we've got the same situation as I mentioned earlier. He's had 2 runs, one more for a handicap run. It'll depend what kind of a race he turns up in next time as to whether he's likely to have a winning chance in a maiden or not, but there's races to be won with him, I'm sure.
Okay, let's take a recap then. That was Orbison latterly there. As you can see, Demora realised, Snooki, Swift Bounty, Tinchu, Dream Tune, Elusive Flame, Salumi, Orbison. Any particular? Are they all?
It's very difficult to pick them out, not knowing what race they're going to run in. Swift Bounty was a huge eye catcher. If he goes the right way, he'd be interesting. Demora, I'm sure, will continue to give a good account wherever she goes. There's a few others where it just depends what sort of a race they end up in next time, to be honest.
Okay, well, that's Hugh Taylor's Eyecatchers for this week, but of